Hey everyone, and welcome. Let me just welcome in our Instagram viewers. My husband set this up this morning and it is not the same. Hang on a sec. Okay, go live there. We're getting it, we're getting it. And back to our comments. Yay! Okay. Chime in if you've got good sound and good camera. Please do let me know. And if you don't, let me know also, and I'll try and address it right away. I'm Susan Smith. You're in my studio, Stitched by Susan. Every day the month of April, I'm coming to you live with topics related to machine quilting, often at the long arm, which is kind of where I'm standing beside now, sometimes relating to sit-down machine quilting as well. All of this leading up to the release of a brand new edition of my freehand quilting masterclass at the end of this month. So I've had this class open for a couple of years, and it's all about learning particularly edge to edge, but all freehand quilting designs, and a certain amount of converting that into custom quilting as well and using it in multiple ways. But the question I have gotten asked more than any other, many times more, is, okay, but how do I use this if I quilt at a domestic machine or at a sit-down long arm? And so in my new edition, I am also demonstrating all these quilting designs at my domestic machine. Barbara's tuning in, all good on sound and video. Thank you very much. Dorothy, picture and sound are fine. Yep, quilted by Sue. Awesome, lots of thumbs up. I appreciate all of you letting me know that, because sometimes I just don't know from this end and it's a little bit delayed. So what I'm seeing on camera is not always what you're seeing either. So I appreciate you tuning in. Okay, this morning's topic is how to practice quilting edge-to-edge designs which go all over a quilt top and not get distracted by seam lines. So how to practice that skill. And I've gotten a few emails in various wordings asking that same question, like, how do I get past that? I can't seem to break out of this point to point or staying within a block. Holding my pen. And in thinking this over, because I've had these emails now for a little while, I've been thinking it over and I thought, you know, it's very interesting. Part of my history, which you may or may not know, is that I homeschooled our kids for 16 years, I think, a long time. And so I'm not a teacher by training, other than I was trained in the school of life, because we had 4 children and a foster child at one point was in our homeschool too. And so they all learned in different ways. So I really had to practice finding different ways to explain things that maybe seemed obvious to me. So when I relate that to quilting, I do always say quilters are not born, they're made, and it's true, but it's also true that we each have natural tendencies, things that come more easily and things that don't come as easily to us. And so when I approach this is one thing that comes easily to me because I've done so much edge-to-edge quilting. I can just look at a quilt and sort of not even look at the piecing and colors and fabrics. I'm just, boom, right to laying that whole quilting design over it. But I'm trying to think through, okay, how can I make this clear or suggest ways that for those of you to whom it does not come easily, you can practice that skill? Because I promise you, you can learn it. It's a matter of training your eyes. Nancy is saying YouTube audio is low volume. I think it's probably your device, Nancy. If all else fails, exit out and back in and see if that fixes it. Just scrolling up through the comments to see if there are any questions so far. Haven't got very far yet, so probably not. Quilted by Sue, Seam Line Distraction Syndrome, SLDS. I thought it might make a fun acronym, but not so much. Stitched by Tasha. I have so many finished quilt tops that need to be quilted, but I don't know how. Oh man, I would love to help you with that. Sandy, appreciate you for helping us become acquainted with our long arm. So good. Okay. Oh, and Diane is saying, hi from Whidbey Island. You're a natural teacher. I'm a former homeschooling mom too. I don't know, Diane, if I'm a natural teacher, honestly. What you're seeing is the result, right, of learning to teach my kids. And so you know that feeling when you're trying to get through some math, some math skills and you're like, okay, he doesn't understand this. Let's try it this way. Let's try it this way, or spelling or whatever the case may be. Who knew it would come in so handy in quilting? Okay, here's my number 1 tip though. And you guys, this will be familiar to many of you. This is a plexiglass sheet. And this is the way I typically use this for auditioning quilting designs. So it's more often honestly for custom quilting. What do I want to put where? Do I like this design versus this one? And I use it on my edge-to-edge tops to pre-decide what size or scale I want my quilting to be. So, I've got a quilt loaded and I'll literally plop this on my long arm or on my table right on top of the quilt. And I use a dry erase marker and I just start scribbling on it. And if I think, oh, that looks too loose and flowy, right, I can mess with that scale. That's how I use this most often. But it occurred to me that this also is a super tool for practicing ignoring the seam lines. So I was trying to think of a parallel, and maybe you other teachers / homeschooling moms will have a good parallel for this. Trying to think of ways that, what else do we look at that we have the option of looking at and focusing on something that's close to us, or literally focusing our eyes beyond it and seeing what's behind. And I honestly couldn't think of a good example, but that's sort of what we're going for. You're actually going to train your eyes to not even notice the fabric or the seam lines or the pretty flowers, but to sort of look beyond that and just see this canvas that you're going to quilt on. So I think that this plexi sheet is a great way to practice it just by setting that on top of your quilt. And if you don't have a plexi sheet or don't want to get one, you might be able to use cling film or possibly even parchment paper, although that's not nearly as easy to see through. I think the clearer the better for these purposes, because the fabric and all the distractions are still there. You're just practicing training your eye to look beyond them and just look at the layer that is the quilting design. So dry erase marker, and I had it here, but I flung it too far off to the side. I just use a scrappy piece of batting to clean my plexiglass between practices. So more details on the plexi. I did do an earlier episode that included this, thinking of it as an audition board, but I'll give the details here as well. This is 1/8 of an inch thick, and I just found it at my local hardware store already cut. My pieces are 18 inches by 24, which I think is a useful size. It's not so heavy that it weights down your quilt at your long arm machine, but it's small enough that you can maneuver it. I can't. Mr. Producer's talking to me at the side here. Dave, just leave it. It gets too complicated when we try to zoom in and out, and I end up losing the camera. I know this from experience. Plexiglass sheet. Hardware store, Amazon does sell them too, but I would check at your local hardware store if they don't have them in this size. I bet they'd be willing to cut them for you. But I think I got mine at Home Depot, which is across the US at least. And then the one thing that we did, and I'll hold it up one more time, is put a little frame of duct tape, so something thick and sturdy on one side of it. It's not wrapped around. A couple reasons for that, but one in particular is it helps keep your marker from inadvertently sliding off the edge. There's a bit of a barrier. That's why you want a fairly thick tape so your marker hesitates there. And secondly, and very importantly, you want a top side that you use your marker on, and you want a clean side that you never put your marker on, because it does leave some residue and you don't want to be wiping that off onto your quilts, right? So then tape side is always up, always the barrier for your pen, always the top side of your plexi sheet facing up. I'm losing my words here. Okay, let's scroll through some comments. And if you have any thoughts or ideas on maybe other ways that we could practice this visual technique, let me know, or if you have any questions. Quilted by Sue, homeschool grandma here. We're all graduated now, but it totally applies. Everyone learns their own way. We do indeed. Nancy, I've been long arm quilting for hire for 23 years and I absolutely enjoy your daily videos. Good. Full of great info that is spot on. Melody, good morning from Oregon. Beautiful day. We have a beautiful one too. We're in a neighboring state to you. One other person saying that volume is too low, but I've only heard that from 2 of you. So I really think that it's probably your device. My husband. Susan's been trying to teach me for over 30 years with moderate success. Mona, your style of tips is fantastic. Lynn, where to get the plexiglass? Well, I do think I addressed that. I would start at a local hardware store. Whether you have chain stores or not, a local hardware store is likely to stock it. And if all else fails, Amazon does for sure carry it. How thick and the size of your plexi? Discussed that too, but to say it one more time, it's 1/8 of an inch thick, and I have 18 by 24 inch sheets, and I keep 4 of them. I like to have several more when I'm auditioning different styles, right? Because I put things on one and then I compare to another and compare to another. So it's handy to have several, but you don't have to. They're relatively inexpensive though. Dell is seeing and hearing good. Cindy, watching you while my new Bernina Q24 is being delivered. Awesome. That's exciting. Quilted by Sue, perhaps using an opaque film in a color over the plexiglass. I kind of see what you're saying, Sue. So you're kind of saying if you have at least a semi-opaque film over the plexi, it would mask that print a little bit and lower the distraction level. So maybe that's a step in the process. And in that case, maybe the parchment paper that I mentioned earlier, if you can see through it well enough to see the seam lines at all, might be an option too, right? So you're kind of taking yourself baby steps. So you've got this semi-transparent something that you're drawing on first, and then go to the fully transparent, and that'll be when you can graduate from there. Penny Jean, dollar store 2-pack clear flexible cutting mats. There you go. That's as inexpensive as it gets. I still would put the tape on them, by the way, so you still have an upside that the marker's used on and a downside that's always clean for your quilt top surfaces, and also that little bit of a barrier for your pen to bump up against. That's a great tip though, Penny Jean. Thank you. Denise, clear shower curtain liner from the dollar store. Look at this. You guys have great tips. And Quilted by Sue is suggesting or tinted. That would probably work well with shower curtains. I bet you could get some that are semi-translucent. And again, they would provide that sort of midline step to be practicing this. Good morning, good morning. Ann Erickson is saying vinyl too. Yep. Julie, it's hard to look past the details when you spent so much time piecing it. It totally is, and if it's your own piecing, of course, you're intimately acquainted with it. I'm so often working on quilts that aren't mine, they're someone else's. But again, these tips are really great. This idea of going part way with a translucent and then on to the clear, it's small steps in increments, but you're getting used to having your eyes not focus on that piecing, but just straight to seeing the layer that is just the quilting design. Just my pretties, what size? 18 inches by 24 is what I have. A few of you are saying the volume is still low. I'm not honestly sure what to do with that. I don't really have a volume setting. I make sure that my microphone is in a safe range, and it is. I'm looking at the feed on that, and beyond that, I don't have control over it. So I'm really, really sorry if the sound is low. Diane, I use a drawing app on the iPad, Procreate, that lets me import a photo of my quilt or block. Then using layers in the app, I can draw on top to try out quilting ideas. Downside is not actual size. So let's rabbit trail down here just a little bit, Diane, because I've got the same program. Procreate is an app and it is free. Too tiny to use on your phone. I don't even know if you can. So you definitely want an iPad, and the bigger, the better. But yes, it's fairly easy because it's an art or a drawing program, and it has layers. So you can quickly import a photo. If you've got a photo on your iPad of your quilt or even of your single block, you can import that photo, and then you can put a transparent layer over it and draw. You can draw with your finger. I've got an Apple pencil. You can draw with the pencil on it. You're right, it's not as ideal because it's not actual size, so it's not going to help you out in terms of figuring out the scale of your design. But it can be helpful still for looking at that layer that is the quilting as opposed to the layer that is the piecing, that is the photograph. You probably could mess with transparencies on that app as well if you're so inclined to do such a thing. Janelle, hello from Wyoming. I've received courage to try something new with my long arm quilting watching Susan. I'm so glad. I bought mine from eBay. Just had to jump in. Yes, the plexiglass is an awesome tool. Good. Linda, good morning. Goat quilter, so good, so good. Sewing Corner, finally caught an April live. So glad you're here. Martha, my husband, got me plexi sheets at Lowe's. Good. Yep, Quilted by Sue is suggesting distract your eye. So that layer of translucency might be all you need to get over that hump. So good, you guys. Okay, we're seeing tons and tons of suggestions. So I appreciate all of those, and I'll let you read through more of them if you wish. I think we've covered the topic pretty well. So again, if you're new to watching, and a couple of you that are here are, long arm quilting is my thing, but for sure machine quilting, and I'm buffing up my skills at my sit-down domestic machine again. But what I most love to do is this idea of creating quilted texture over entire quilts. So we often call that edge to edge quilting or all over quilting, goes from one edge right to the other. So you're not stopping for blocks, borders, etc., or thread changes. You're just laying a layer of quilting over. So today's topic really has been exploring how can we train our eye to not be distracted by the seams, the blocks, the contrast, the florals, the colors, whatever the case may be, and just focus on the layer that is the quilting. So top tip then is to use something transparent, and I choose to use these plexiglass sheets, which are so convenient. Viewers have chimed in with great tips like going to the dollar store and getting see-through cutting mats, like really inexpensive for sure. Press and seal, which is not very stiff, but you can see through it. So all those things I think would be helpful. So all these daily lives, every day, all month of April, are leading up to the opening of enrollment to my freehand quilting masterclass at the end of this month. So this is going to incorporate a whole ton of my style of quilting, these freehand designs where you can just load up or baste a quilt and just dive right into quilting out of your own imagination. So in the course, I teach a little over 30 different designs. So you've got a built-in repertoire sort of for every occasion. And more importantly, I spend a good deal of time talking about my thought processes, how I came up with these designs, how I converted them from whatever my original idea was to something that's a continuous line that I can remember and repeat all over a quilt top, because I want you to be able to create your own original designs too and not just be limited to the 31 or 32 that are in the class, but be able to use it as a springboard. So that's what that's all about. More information coming up on that over the next couple of weeks. So I do come live every day. I try and do it in the morning specific time. So whenever you can, catch them live. If you enjoy these, do give a thumbs up. That helps them to be more visible to more quilters, which is great. More people in our quilting community. So that always makes us happy. So thanks for joining me today, and I will be back tomorrow with a fresh topic, yet to be determined. See you then.